Yep, recording. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Mark Wriggle with John Lavinia's Success Mastermind. Today is November 12th, 2020. We are just just a little over 5 weeks to the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice, December 21st. So, yeah, these days are going to shorten up a little bit more before we get back to growing the days again. So, just got to knuckle down and bear it. Who do we have with us today? Hey, Gail, you've got pole position today. And then I see Koila and Adrian J. Nikki, she's on the other corner. I'm using the gallery view here. Neil is up close and personal on his screen. There's Sonia and Mandy, Coral, Suzanne from Switzerland, Evier, she who never sleeps. She was up till 2 in the morning last night. Good Lord. Carlene's with us. Sandy up in Yelm, Washington. Yes, the two seasons of the Northwest, rain and summer. Now they're in rain. For those of you who live in the greener parts of the world, you might have the same kind of thing going on. There's Caroline, the Reverend from Houston. Hey, look, show me the sign. There you go, brother. Right on. Khaled's with us. Joe and Gina from Florida. Nancy showing up. Mary, how's the Portland area going? Ace Man, Wyoming. You getting cold and blustery there yet? Nicola, there's John. iPhone 7S. I don't know who that is, but and they have their screen blanked out, so I can't see the face. Sandra, Lindsay, she's in town as well. And of course, Mr. Lavinia, the magnet, is here with us. I see Omar, Robin, Cyril, Evelyn, Wayne from Canada, and Carl from Canada as well. So that's the crowd today, it looks like. Let's get things kicked off today. Today's leadership session is called Capitalizing on Team Talents. Let's play best ball. And we'll get to that. For those who play golf, you probably know what I'm talking about. I'm going to jump into this right away. Let me do my share screen and get things rolling before we waste any more time. Share, there we go. Let me pull it up. Okay, and I'll minimize that so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Sorry, let me back up. Okay, so here's the first one, 15 minutes, 40 minutes. This is kind of the standard ploy now. I'm trying to get into a routine here so we can open up as much as we can for the general and just an open forum for everybody. For those of you who don't think that we carry much weight when we're humping around and you wonder, grunts, we're supposed to be, these people have speed and endurance. Well, look at what this guy on the right is carrying. This is, yeah, and I know that I think the SAS and the SBS they wear these huge packs that weigh about 209 pounds as well when they go to layup points. So you got to be in shape. That's why we train so heavily, because you've got to carry a lot of weight to your destination. And these guys are obviously, I mean, I suspect this is just training. That looks like maybe the mountains, the Sierra Mountains in the background of California. And they're moving from one place to another, probably to a forward operating base. This is part of the training. And if you look to the left, you'll see myself and now Lieutenant General Eric Smith. Him and I were lieutenant colonels together. This is a picture taken in the Fallujah area. And if you wonder what that guy is in the middle, he was an Iraqi officer. There was a mission that went to save him. Basically, he was being tortured by insurgents, and we don't show the feet purposely because his feet were all blistered up from where they had wrapped electrodes and put electrodes in his feet and were shocking him to get information about the American forces. So he paid some heavy dues to get where to get where he was at, and we saved him, and he was obviously very happy about it. But they did a number on him. He's kind of looking down. He's still a little peaked coming back from it, but he's good to go. Another picture. This is, since we're talking the team environment, team talents, this is an 8-man MARSOC team, Marine Special Operations Command. These guys are probably kind of new in the gig, and you can see they're trying to learn how to take a 4.7 combat rubber raft, across the ways, and they're probably down in San Diego, probably at North Island in Coronado, learning to do this because it looks like the kind of water in the waves, and that's where they do a lot of their training down in that area. So they're probably learning how to get weight on the front of the boat, how to get over the waves quickly. You see a guy there with a paddle. There's actually a guy right in the middle of the boat to get stability, and then there's the one guy in the middle on the transom, and then you've got two others that are on the sides trying to stabilize. It's quite an effort, and you'd think that boat, they could lift it up with ease, running around with it, and they do. But this is just another team training event to try and get this, and this is without all their gear. This looks to me like they're just doing some initial training and learning about how to take these kind of watercraft into open surf. So let's get into the meat of the matter. I want to talk about talents first. I like to use team sports, but I'd say that one could use all the descriptors that I've put here in the professional world either. And I don't think it would take that much to really transpose what we look at in the sports world to what is in the professional or even the personal world. They have, and being a guy, being an American and watching sports and being a lover of football in particular, I may make comment to that. So I talk about offense and defense and individual positions. So yes, we have a team environment, but in order to effect a very strong team result, the individuals also have to have, they should have certain skills. They should have, specialized skills and they should be very good at them. And we should capitalize on those skills in order to make the team even that much stronger. What would be some things that we would look at in the sports side? Speed, size, quickness. You can read through the list. Coordination. I look at something like reaction time, and we could say reaction time, yes, in terms of sports, say a defensive back who is backpedaling while you have a receiver who gets to run forward, and he needs to close on a pass. He's watching a play develop, and he has to close in on somebody when the ball is in the air. How, can he react to that very quickly? And then he doesn't have the speed to get there in time to possibly intercept or at least stop the play by making the tackle. But in business as well, the reaction time, as we see things unfold in business, as the market starts to change, as items in the marketplace begin to change, as the conditions begin to change, how quickly can we react in our own business to make those things happen? So it may have some different ways to look at it. Same with adaptability. That's what I say that's what I mean when I'm talking about looking at sports and then looking at business, and why these kind of descriptors would have application to both. And we can look across the gambit of the sports world in swimming. We have people who swim for endurance reasons. They do very long distances. We have the sprints, the 50 meters, the 100 meters. We have the medleys. Same in track and field. We have a 4 by 400, where each guy runs 400, each person or each track, each athlete runs 400 meters and they hand off a baton, or somebody who runs a marathon. They would not have the same type of talents or skills. And there is a difference between talents and skills, and we will get to that as well. Same thing in skating, with speed skating, long distance skating, skiing, talking about downhill, etc. So any weight class sports, those of you participated in, say, the martial arts and judo, or if you were a wrestler and you've got somebody in the 101-pound class and somebody in the unlimited, the heavyweight class, there's a lot of difference in terms of how we look at those people and what their what their positions entail for the capabilities that they have. And it would be the same in business. Somebody who is maybe just starting out and they're an apprentice and they're just learning how to become a welder, as opposed to somebody who's a journeyman who's been there for many, many years and welded just about everything on the planet, and understands, MIG and TIG and all the different kinds of welding. Oh, that's just so we could see the progression. So let's talk about talent versus skill. Talent, these are basic, as we would define them, sort of natural, God-given abilities that we have, and it doesn't take much effort. We've seen people, those of us who have played in sports particularly, have seen people come out who just have a natural ability to run very fast, or can do these long distances, or can withstand actually quite a bit of pain, as either in a sport like football or judo, or somebody who is more sensitized and has maybe very refined skills, like in the shooting area. If they're doing long distance, known distance shooting, and they have very loose joints, and they can relax, and they can get very tight and settled positions to have very stable, and they have a low heartbeat, and they can have very stable positions where when they go to shoot, when we have this acronym called BRASS: breathe, relax, aim, stop, and squeeze. And they could do this very well. And when the round goes off and goes down range, they have very good accuracy, even at 500 or 1,000 meters. And skills would be those that are that we can train to, that we can learn to become good at, not necessarily talent. So that's really, that would be the difference between talent and skills. And I've just listed a few examples here based on the link that you can see down below. That's where I pulled my resource from. Well, here are just some people may have a natural ability to be able to write. Maybe they can do poetry. Maybe they just have a command of the English or whatever language is their primary language, and they just flow with words and descriptions, and they're very attractive in the way they bring the reader in. And others, just it takes some time to really develop that skill, and it might be a very specialized type of skill in writing. It's one thing to be able to write and describe what's going on in nature and outside, and maybe there's one has to develop a certain expertise in a certain area, like let's just take Stuart, for example. And he's been doing he's been doing his treks for 30 years with llamas, so he's acquired and learned a great deal about the environment and about nature and the plants that you can or cannot eat, the things you stay away from, and altitude. He could probably write very well, but he would write something, maybe he can have a nice flowing description about like he does with his sessions, his mindset sessions, and they're really fun to listen to. But then to put that on paper and be very technical about certain things, you wouldn't approach it in the same way if you're writing a technical manual of how would you load these packs on these llamas. That would be a different thing than, say, just writing about what it looked like to walk into this valley with these mountainscapes around you in this big bowl, and how would that be described to the reader. So it's different in that approach too. So these are all different ways that we'd have to learn or gain skill sets. Let's talk about managing skill sets. So as we are in a position where we have led people, and we have people that are coming up through the ranks, and we are still followers, because there may be those who are looking to us to be the sort of the middle managers. How do we bring people along and still improve the um, the corporation or the entity that we are part of? And what is required in that? We talk about workforce planning. So the company may have a direction they want to go, and they have a specific kind of person they need to bring on board. If they were a company that builds aluminum boats, well, they would be hiring the people that could, the welders and people who understand something about the marine environment, understand about the materials and the wiring, etc. You might actually be able to cross you might be able to cross the skill set. And that's why I mentioned skill sets now, is because there may be somebody from, say, the auto manufacturing or the aviation environment that has the ability to work with wiring bundles and cannon plugs and those kind of things, where maybe that skill set is transferable from one place to another. But it's a matter of planning to see how we put those people together and where they fit in the organization in order to create greater efficiencies. So that's part of that recruiting process. And to get there, what are we doing on the strategic side, and aligning those people we bring in and how we train them to where we are trying to go as a company. Executive coaching, we have people who are managing, and there's an expectation by those that are turning the wrenches and doing the layman work and doing the groundwork, and they have their nose to the grindstone, and they're making all the activities. They're building the plane, they're building their boat, they're building the car, or they're talking with customers directly if they're in that environment. And then they have those who are managing. What are the people upstairs doing to try to create a more efficient environment, an easier environment to work within, instead of establishing maybe tighter and tighter or heavier constraints on what they can and can't do. But that then gets into the legal environment, and in terms of what in terms, what laws or what mandates or what guidance is put in place that does or does not allow those actions to take place. And we all have to comply with those no matter where we're at, and we have to learn how to work with those. And the management, the supervisory teams have to have an understanding of that too, because it has an effect. If they make a decision that might have great value for one particular team, say people who are working in an avionics division, but it really puts some friction on those who are working in hydraulics, have to figure out how does this all work so we can work in lockstep and consonance together. Recognition programs. That's how do you take care of the people that excel? Ivier just had a great session on this, I don't know, just in the last week or two, talking about how she went through this and what they were dealing with. I think earlier this week we were even discussing recognition and individual recognition, and how people are getting certain people are getting recognition because now it's sort of the status quo. They are always expected to get recognition, and I think it's a very valid point when we look at who's getting these, and they have an expectation that this is going to, they're sitting there going, yeah, I'm going to get it again this year. And when it doesn't happen, because somebody new walks into it and goes, well, wait a second, I'm going to do a little reality check, and we're going to get a little more pragmatic about how we do this, or maybe the rules of the game have changed somewhat. So that all of a sudden, what kind of friction does that create? What sort of hate and discontent does that start to develop? So there are a lot of moving parts here that somebody has to keep their pulse on the organization and the people of that organization to see how those things are. And by that, you have one person maybe that doesn't get this all of a sudden, and somebody else who deserves it gets it, and it gets the recognition, and they're happy as clams, and the people around them maybe, and isn't that kind of the big that's the I don't want to say payoff. It's, now that I'm looking at this, and I'm not helping, I'm not giving to this person like they're always used to giving. I do it this, but have I now set the stage for a greater number of people in the organization to realize that, hey, this person actually is being fair and equitable in this, and does that end up improving the morale overall? Well, I'd say yes. And does that put me in a different position? Certainly, at least for a time, that may put me in a tighter and more frictious position with that person. But as a whole, does it improve the entire team and the environment and the business? Because now maybe I'm being looked at now as somebody who is more equitable and fair in my approach to everyone, and I'm not playing favorites. We talked about this as well. Diversity, inclusion, engagement. We talk about the people who are gaining talents and abilities and having them come in to participate now in the organization. And they may have certain skill sets that they're given an opportunity to utilize, and we should give them that, so that what we show and what we reflect is really a community at large. And that makes it, as much as you may not agree, or you do, perception is reality. I can remember being a young captain at and this was in Guam, the Air Force Base in Guam at Anderson, and we had an environmental attorney talk to us, and this was going to be an hour and a half, and it was going to be very dry. and he knew it. And there were about 200 of us that had come from all over the Pacific Theater, Navy and Marines, to sit in this, because we were people. When I was working in Atsugi, Japan, for example, I had 79 Japanese nationals, and I ran the support equipment rework facility in Atsugi, Japan. That's all the aviation support equipment for the Navy and Marine Corps in the whole Pacific, Indian Ocean, and Persian Gulf. And we did rework. We did high-level, full rework on equipment. So I had a lot of hazardous materials and hazardous waste issues, and that's why I was invited to go to this session and learn something. And this attorney got up front and he says, "Okay, I'm going to be talking for an hour and a half, and I know there's going to be people who just want to go to sleep, so that's fine. But I want you to remember two things: perception is reality, and get the monkey off your back." And we all kind of giggled about that, but when I put a little more thought into it, and he explained it as well, it really was what a person's perception is their reality. And and we have to, as supervisors in that environment, we must understand that. And if you want to know more, we can talk offline on a sidebar sometime. I won't get into it in depth here because I want to keep this thing rolling. And get the monkey off your back. If action comes to you and you're expected to take care of something, take care of it. If something comes in the inbox and it's saying, "I need to do this," and I say, "Well, I don't have the materials or the resources to do that right now." Well, do something and move it along. Get it into your outbox and move it to the next person that needs to at least take a look. If it comes back to your inbox several times, because now it is on you, and maybe by that point the resources that are necessary come in, or by that time there's a way to explain why there's an activity that cannot happen at a certain time, you must be prepared to explain yourself and why that is. So that's what he meant. And in the world of the environmental aspects, and this was back in the 90s, imagine 80s and 90s, we were dealing with a lot, and still to this day. But there was a lot of sensitivity because we were using things like MEK and other very skin penetrating chemicals, and a very strong movement in those days to move to personal protective equipment. We're dealing with COVID. We all understand PPE in a much different environment now. So I wanted to transition a little bit here into the open session. What is best ball? Most people here, I suspect, have played golf or understand the game of golf as a whole. But best ball it's really meant to be fun, but it's also a time for businesses or entities or corporations or even multiple organizations to get together, or people from different parts of the nation, or maybe they've even come in from other parts of the world, and we put this tournament together. 72 people, 4 people are on each one of the holes of the 18 holes in a golf course. They're all sitting around, jaw jacking, having a good old time. And at a pre-designated time, say it's 8 o'clock in the morning, the gun goes off, and of course you might be on a hole that you don't really hear it, but you're watching the clock, and everybody's kind of looking at each other off in a distance, and it's called a shotgun start. Everybody hits, the first of the 4 people get up on each one of the green, on each one of the fairways, and they drive off the tee, and the game is on. All 72 people start moving in lockstep together. The second person gets up, the third person gets up, and the fourth person gets up. And then they all walk down the fairway, and they get to a point where to go, okay, well, did Joe have the longest drive here and the one that has the best lie? Or, did maybe Ivier hit, okay, wow, this came out to like 290 yards or 310 or something. And they go, we want to use that one. What just happened? Well, everybody came together. They had a little school circle real quick, and they said, we want to use this one. Yeah, this one might have been a little bit shorter, but it's not over in the rough, which would be a tougher shot. So they do the same thing, and this is repeated over and over and over again. And the idea is to use whoever hit the best shot, and it will vary a lot. There may be some people who are really kind of the hacks, who are really good at the game, and you may use their shots more so than others. But inevitably, through the course of 18 holes, with all the shots that have to happen, somebody gets everybody's participating. Everybody gets that one shot. They say, hey, yeah, this is, we're all using your ball now. And that's the whole point, is that we are capitalizing on that one person's shot at that particular moment. And the idea is to get to, and when we talk about par, par for the course, where'd that come from? It's like, it's what is normal, what is expected, that we expect that you get from the time that you hit a ball off the tee to it's in the hole. This is a par 4, a par 5, a par 3. That's what they mean by that. You should be able to get a ball in the hole, generally speaking, in 3 shots, in 4 shots, in 5. And if you're playing best ball, normally there are going to be a whole bunch of birdies, and that's doing it in lessons. So say if you have a par 5, that means that you did it in 4, or an eagle, you did it in 3. And I've seen that happen as well. So everybody is using the best shots along the whole way. And you get to the green, and now you're chipping, you're using different clubs to get the ball close to the hole. And through the course, through this tournament, there are things like, longest drive, and we have little flags out there with little lines on them, and you write person's name down. And of course, there's a certain amount of honor that's expected in this, and that flag goes out there. So people start looking at the course going, when they get to the longest, the longest ball, longest drive, they're looking out there for that flag, and they're going, wow, that was pretty. And they get out there and they go, and they look at the markers, because the courses have these usually have little discs that kind of tell you where you're at. And if you're doing a cart and it's telling you, you've got a pretty good idea how many yards you've gone. So there are people out there can drive a ball pretty far. And then you get to a par 3, and it's like closest to the pin, or a hole in one. There's certain prizes for that kind of stuff. So there are incentives, much like there is in business or in other sports. That there are trophies, or there are incentives, or things that that we acknowledge a win, and everybody has some excitement in this. So it's a really good time. And of course, there's the other side of this when in best ball, where other activities go on too, and you have your fun with that. So there's a lot of fun and spirited debate that goes on there. There's a lot of razzing, and that's fully accepted. To do this. So keeps light, and keeps things kind of hearty, and just joyful. And that's really the point of it too, is while there's a friendly competition going on, and somewhat of a seriousness in some ways, there's also particularly at that moment when somebody's hitting the ball, there's a respect that's given. People kind of shut up most of the time if they're on the same team. And once in a while, people will goof around with each other, but by the same token, people want to have fun. And at the end of the whole thing, everybody comes together and does the kumbaya thing, and they have a good time, and they high five, and they razz each other. And it's a really great event. Usually takes around to 5 hours or so, and the whole time, maybe 6 or even 7 hours, when you get to the end and everybody goes to the 19th hole, and they find out who won the certain mini events of the tournament, etc. So, and am I an advocate of this? Yes. And have I seen people get really upset in golf? Yes. Have I seen a new decorating of certain trees with clubs? Yes. I'm just amazed at what some people do, that get upset over a game, and no shot is ever the same. That's another great aspect of golf, and no matter how many times one does it. But I know some people think walking around and then you have to stop to make a shot. I saw that just the other day. But anyway, I think it's a fun game if you look at it that way. Some people obviously take it quite seriously, but in business we take certain things quite seriously too. But for this kind of event, it's a good team building event. So again, why play best ball? So I want to transfer this a little bit into why we would do this, and I'm closing in on going to the open forum, but I'd ask you to kind of take a look at the questions that one might ask themselves in a supervisory capacity, and why would best ball be a way for us to kind of understand, is this what we're doing in our business? And we may not be in positions where we have the tethers of power to be able to do this, but doesn't mean we can't acknowledge these and maybe bring them as advisors to the company to look at things and walk in. As Ivier stated earlier this week, you walk in with your ducks in a row. You know what you're going to say, and you may win some, and you may lose some, but you bring them to those decision makers who can, and be ready to state your case. So anyway, are people in their best positions? Are we utilizing their talents and skills fully? Have we watched people enough to know where maybe they're not in quite the right place? Now, if they have a particular certification, yeah, there's not much we can do about that necessarily, but maybe that certification, there's somebody else, and I talk about this a little bit down in this listing. Maybe you create some redundancy, somebody can fill that in, and maybe you rotate some people. Maybe this person, it's time for them to have maybe a better understanding of the administrative side of things, and you move them into a position where they are still they're supervised, but they get to learn what somebody else is doing, and they go, now they have a little better appreciation for, the grass. It seems like it would be greener, but you get over there and you go like, man, it's actually pretty brown and burnt here. So, we go through that too. Are we? And that's what I mean by cross pollination amongst a team. You're attempting to gain better understanding, and by doing that, you actually improve the team as a whole and their capabilities. And then what do you do when somebody wants to take vacations or they need time off, or somebody is sick and you have to fill that spot and you have production milestones or goals to meet? Do you have somebody that can fit that in, or are you gonna have to take a hit and you're gonna fall behind because of it? Having these things help. Just maybe you can't be as robust as you normally are because of the loss of a person for a while, but you can minimize the losses, so to speak. Have you established stretchable milestones to gain, in order to attain team goals, improve confidence, cooperation? And what I mean by this is we push the envelope. We want people, we want a team, or we want a company or a group of people to, as we do ourselves. This mastermind environment, and what in my opinion, what John has been teaching us and bringing to us and sharing with us since my coming on board in March, is exactly that. We're stretching ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, etc. But if that's the whole point, we're moving that out. We're taking those little steps to get better and better. And what does that do for us? It increases and improves our confidence. It also lets us work as a team. Look at this group here that we have, this family, and I'd run us against any political arm across the globe for what we can do now and how we work together and how we seem to be able to find answers and have a very copacetic environment with one another. I'm just, and I don't think it's any secret. And I think John knew this many years ago with this environment. He knew walking into this, he already knew where this was going to go. So sort of the burning bush of the mastermind environment, that's our leader here, and that's what it shows us, that he because he's done this before, he knows where this goes, and he's helping us along in this environment. And then celebrating the wins, and when people get to win together, particularly, that also brings them together. If they work in difficult environments together, that also brings them together. But when they get something at the end of it and it works out, and it's the big win, and they see that they've been able to accomplish something together like that through very trying times, particularly the more difficult they are, and they get that win, they coalesce, they become a unit. Now instead of trying to bring them together and wondering like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this, like herding cats, all of a sudden they're like gorilla glue. You ain't separating them. They are cohesive. 5, 10 years ago that they were together, the stuff that they endured, now a person can be gone and they show up on a doorstep, and Joe Umptyfrats has all his new friends in a neighborhood, and they've been there for 15, 20 years, and he's got he's got kids that are in high school, and this guy walks in from nowhere after being gone for these years, and he goes to the top of the heap in their friend column, and it's like everybody else is going like, who the heck is this? Well, that's because they endured things that happened many, many years ago. Isn't that really where we want to go? Isn't that who we are becoming in this environment now? that most of us have not even met. Now, some of you in the UK, I understand you got together, but most of us are still working in the virtual environment like this. But imagine what it would be like, and then to do team building events, or to go to Stewart's, or to do an offsite someplace down the road and do some things together. And imagine what it would do. That would take us, we'd be on steroids after that in terms of our lives. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So I'll leave you with this. Two quotes. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And if anybody doesn't know who John Wooden was, he was a UCLA basketball coach that had a huge number of wins. He's the guy who developed the fast break. And UCLA had a number of years where they were just virtually unbeatable in NCAA basketball. And then, of course, everybody, I suspect that if you don't know who Michael Jordan is, the guy is amazing. He's still around. He's still a highly successful businessman. I've never lost a game. I just ran out of time. Isn't that the most important commodity for all of us, is time? Because it's finite. There's only so much of it. And once it's behind you, it's done. It's like the round down range. It's like the golf ball down range. Once you've hit it, once you've done that, that action is behind you. Forget about it. It's gone. It's done. Focus here. And with that, I will open it up, and I'm going to stop my share. And I'm hoping that's giving you enough time to kind of look at some of those questions I just posed in the second slide and see who is interested in coming out and commenting on any of this. Hopefully I made some sense to somebody in today's session. Okay, Star, I see your hand up. Please come on out. Thank you.
I was gonna not talk today because I've been talking all week, but I thought I would just jump in. What a great presentation, and there's so much in there, and the value in teamwork outside of the corporate environment, outside of the office, outside of your normal settings, to flag up, as you said, leaders, emerging leaders, people, put them outside of their standard working line management roles, etc. So people feel emboldened and empowered to do things slightly differently, like for younger members of the team or whatever. So yeah, I totally see the value in that. But I love the idea of us all being together doing something like that, Mark. That's just such a great thought, and just what we could all do if we were focused in one direction is just unbelievable to think about, really.
Thank you, Star. Yes, I agree that having doing these team building events, doing them outside of the work environment, that's actually a great point that you make there too, is you embolden people, and when they are kind of on the even playing field, so to speak, then you kind of get to see who is this person really. And the frailties or the strengths have a tendency to come out. And when people see that people are really people, go ahead, please. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I was going to say, because like just in my work events, because I work for a big international company, they're generally really just like socials. I mean, we have had like darts in a darts place, but there's nothing that where you have to do sort of teamwork, team building type things, where there's a level playing field in that capacity, or there's the golf driving range I've been to. But I would love to be at an event like that, where everyone is on a level playing field and you can see whose skills come to the fore. It's interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
And these skills can be something that somebody does not necessarily have they aren't the ace in the hole, so to speak, or they haven't been called in as the marker. So it might be the egg toss, or running around the bat kind of thing, in circles, and then running back. These things that are just quirky and crazy. But everybody has to do them, and relays, those kind of things where nobody really has the drop on everybody else, so to speak. So those kind of things do level the playing field, and I think most people appreciate that somebody hasn't been called in to to be the marker for the big win kind of thing. That's
Exactly,
that actually can have some demotivating effects too. So thanks, Star. Hey, Wayne, I see your hand up, and then Cyril after that. Come on out, Wayne. How's the Great
Hey,
White
Mark, how
North
you
doing,
doing?
man? So
No, it's plenty of snow up here right now. Yep, it was minus 11 C this morning, so not too cold, not too hot. So, yeah, great presentation, Mark. Really enjoyed what you're saying. And it brought to mind an experience that I had back in 2004 when the Indian Ocean tsunami occurred, and Indonesia and Southeast Asia were impacted. We had some relief flights going up to assist up in Medan in Indonesia, and they were operating out of RAAF Amberley to the west of Brisbane. So it was a military base, but we were operating civil aircraft because we had the passenger airlift capacity to take aid workers and military personnel to go assist in the disaster that had occurred in Southeast Asia there. And so because military operations is different than civil operations and is governed by different regulations, myself, a maintenance guy, and a government liaison, regulatory affairs guy, went out to the Air Force Base there to work with the different components that were required to pull this operation together. And so I was there as an airport operations guy, to oversee the loading of the airplane, make sure the weight and balance calculations were done correctly, and so on. The maintenance guy was there to make sure the airplane was functional and able to go, just in case something went wrong, which occasionally occurs. And the regulatory affairs guy was there to sort of interact, I guess, with the government side, being military. So anyway, we got everything away, and the airplane left without a hitch, and we all rode back to Brisbane together, and dropped off this regulatory affairs guy. And so the maintenance guy, Jim, was kind of one of these I guess no BS sort of guys, get the job done, very practical sort of fella. The other guy, the regulatory affairs guy, who spent most of his life down in Canberra, the national capital, representing our corporate representation, I guess, to lobby government and those sorts of things. So dealing with bureaucrats and those sorts of conversations. So when we dropped him off, Jim says to me, "How do you put up with that guy? I just wanted to punch him." And so when you're talking about talents and skill sets, we had a team there to get a job done, but very, very different points of view and very different skills and talents that came into play. And sort of being the operations guy in the middle, being a person who in pulling that off was, I guess, trying to help get those 2 points of view to sort of see each other's place on the team. So yeah, it was a very interesting experience. And so what you were talking about in the different skill sets, the different talents, and they can certainly cross over at times, and you can build skill, but we tend towards skills that are related to our talents. So and so that meant, later in my career into seeing different things, that we would often look at moving people from cross-functional departments to bring new experience. So somebody from an operations control environment, move them into an airport, take the airport person, move them into the operations and control environment, quite different skill sets. People that used to work for me just before I finished here in March, you would never put them in the public face. Very, very good at what they did, but interacting with the public would be more of a challenge for them, just because of their aptitudes, their talents, and the things that they were good at. A lot of times didn't put up with things that they felt in principle were not correct, so they would just tell it straight. But very good at recovering situations, as far as rescheduling planes, getting crews moving, all those sorts of things. But when it came to dealing with maybe a lost bag, they would be a little bit too frank and in your face for somebody. So it's interesting how teams interact, but all of them are necessary together, particularly in big, you talk about sports teams, different skill sets that come together to hopefully achieve that win. And the same in the corporate world, all those different skill sets that come together. So there's some roles like pilots and flight attendants that seem to be glory. Everybody asks you if that's what, every time you say I work for an airline, they ask you, are you a pilot? Because they're sort of the ones that people see out in front, but there's so many roles behind, other skill sets that are required for that success to occur and for those pilots to have a reason to fly. So Great conversation today, Mark. I really appreciate everything you shared, and a lot of good stuff there about teamwork and being part of a team and filling our place to the best we can.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. And you made some great points. Aviation maintenance, as we both understand that pretty well. I know in that environment, when people, especially if there's tragedy and there's an acceleration and there's a reaction, people try, and so tempers can be maybe a little flared, or people, their intentions are great, they want to make something happen, they want to work to help out, but that's exactly what, and the same thing happens in flight schedules for, and how many sorties we're going to do on a particular day in a squadron, that sort of thing. And you have people that just want to fix something, but that's why you have multiple levels or multiple eyeballs looking at things. And that's why we use things like safety wire, and they do so many turns, because actually the science of it has proven that, so many turns on a certain particular piece of gear creates a greater safety environment, greater safety for that particular component. And why do you have other eyeballs? Because exactly when you talk about the guy who, wanted to punch the other guy in the face, well, because if somebody's looking over there and that person has done the fix, that gives us a different kind of perspective. Somebody who's not necessarily part of that, but they're the ones that are going to sign off too. Excuse me. So they see that, and they say, okay, now I'm willing to sign that particular action off because it's been done correctly. And there's a reason for this. That's why we have inspections on components in aircraft at certain hours or for certain fatigue life expended, because it's been experienced that there's increasing failure. There's a failure rate, a mean failure rate that occurs. So we try to have inspections inside that window so that we don't ever have a failure. And for those who are trying to fix the gear, that all they want to do is they have this thing, I just want to fix it, I want to get it done, I want to complete my action, I want to look good. And then those that say, well, wait a second here, we want to make sure that it was done correctly, because when it goes up there, it's not, you're nice here, safe on the ground, and it's no big deal for you. But when they take it up in the air and they just happen to have 200 or 300 people in that plane, if something goes awry, that could be a real issue. And it's not just them maybe in the air, maybe they're overpopulated areas, and it's going to be a real mess for a whole bunch of people, and there's going to be a lot bigger issue than just that. So weight and balance, I dealt with weight and balance all the time, Wayne. I get that too. Weight goes too far into the back of an airplane, it can't maintain lift, it tips up, and then it just does one of these things and it comes back down. If anybody hasn't seen that video of the 747, in Kandahar over in Afghanistan, taking off, go type that in and watch these guys who were full of fuel, and they had a dislodge, somebody, a 463L pallet or something broke loose in the back of the airplane, and you watch the 747 come right up like this. They turned around and they went right back into the ground right after takeoff, killed everybody on board, and it was a huge fireball. I mean, these are the kind of things that happen. If somebody probably forgot to do something, they didn't check the straps, there was something, there wasn't a second set of eyeballs looking through to make sure things were right, and there was a material failure of some kind. So these things happen, and this is why we go through these checks. All right. Hey, Cyril, you're up. Go ahead. Excuse me.
Hi, guys. Yeah, a really interesting one today. Thank you, Mark. Actually, it was your first quotes that got me, because I've found throughout a lot of my life, I've been working on trying to get out of the way of myself. Hence the reason I had to work so hard on myself, because the learning how not to get in terms of internal dialogue getting in the way, and my natural, I've always been quite a natural nervous person, although as with experience that has waned to some extent. But my natural nervousness has always been a problem, in that my reactions were either too fast and made me too clumsy, but often the internal dialogue would cause the body to work in the wrong way, because I had mentally set it up unknowingly in the wrong way. So yes, and I must admit, working in a team, I must admit, I've really, as an adult, got to enjoy working as a team. I found it quite difficult at first, but working in a team I found really interesting, and an interesting place to take the mind in terms of the group, so that we the group get the best out of what we're doing. It's an interesting place to be, and it's great when you've got people, when you're in a team where people know when they know what they're doing, and able to, and we all strive to get it all done in the best possible way and in the quickest form. There's not a lot like it, actually. It's really good fun. Yeah, but interesting one today, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyril. Yes, and I believe with what you've just said, Cyril, it kind of the way I'm interpreting that is that's exactly why we're all here. We have internal dialogue that we deal with, and it's the whole success mastermind aspect of this. It's what we are doing within ourselves that we are attempting to reiterate every single day: the positivity, the law of attraction, the tilling of the garden, so to speak. James Allen, as a man thinketh. I keep coming back to that book just because it's so fundamentally perfect in my book, no pun intended, but it just in terms of how we think. If we want to think positive, those kind of things will naturally emanate from us. And if we want to think negative, we can attract those, and we can, stay in our funk, if we want to stay there too. So either way it works. I see a hand up here, and I see a point, like a period. Is there I don't see anybody in here. If somebody wants to, who is?
That's me, Mark.
Oh, okay, yeah, it is. Okay, there, Bill. Oh, a period. What is that, Bill? What the heck, man?
What is the point?
Okay, it is the point. Okay, I get it. All right. Yeah, jarheads, we're kind of that way sometimes.
Mark, that was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And just on the back of what Cyril was saying there, and what you have said there regarding internal battles, the book that I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago, The Untethered Soul, the author, Michael A. Singer, he basically tells us that we do have, obviously, and we all know we have this battle every day in our heads. Should I go to the shops now, or should I wait? Will it rain? And it's all internal. No matter what you're doing, you have this conversation. But he asks you to imagine that the person that's answering you in your head is sitting beside you as a separate unit, a separate human, a separate friend. And yet, but it's trying to get you to see that if you're having this team battle with yourself, that you can speak to this person that's sitting beside you, as opposed to having it internally in your head, where maybe you can be a little bit more rational. I worry sometimes when I see people looking at me because I'm talking to myself, walking down the street, or have done something and you're going, you stupid, or forgot something, and people do turn and look at you. But it is something, I mean, teams are always better than individuals. There's no two ways about it. There's a great camaraderie about a team. And if you get a good team that comes together at the right time, there's nothing to beat that, because you have everybody with the separate skill sets that are going to bring something forward to that. Obviously, the issue is, as Wayne intimated to you about one guy, how do you work with that guy? I'd punch him. Well, on occasion, some of them have been punched, but and I'll say that it's metaphorical, but they learn from that. We learn from that. We've all got to get on in that sort of skill set, and just on. And I'm sorry to bore the entire nation here, but I'm going to throw out a small story about the aircraft industry. And it was an aircraft that was just being first built, set up, all done. Sorry, I'm just looking at Suzanne's asked me, is that a skill? Yes, it is a skill, Suzanne. Punching somebody. I'm getting away with it. But we had to move this aircraft, no engines on it or anything at that precise moment in time. We had to take it across the runway. We decided it was a good idea in our team. We had a young apprentice, a fellow called David, who was 17, and we said, well, you can do brakeman. So he sits in the pilot's seat, and he would operate the brakes, not to touch them. And as you guys will know, when you tow an aircraft, there are things called shear pins fitted in the front nose gear.
Yes.
So if you're tugging too much, these pins give way and protect the landing gear from any damage, and the trailer and tow vehicle would just move on. So inevitably, one of the guys that was driving did this, and the shear pins went. So of course the guys sitting behind in the truck were giving the young fella the "put the brakes on, kid, put the brakes on," and he was going, you know, there's nothing, and he's quite high up in the aircraft, and he's going, nothing, and the aircraft's trundling down the apron so on its own. So I says, "Well, pull the emergency." And those days that was the old cable. So I'm sure it's a damn sight more technological now, but asked him then to pull the cable, and he pulled the cable and he showed it as it came out in his hand. Somebody hadn't attached it. So there goes the aircraft, and we just merrily watched it career into the porta cabin at the end of the runway. There was nothing we could do. And the poor fellow was obviously gutted, you know, but we explained to him, "It's not your fault, kid. It's our fault for putting you in there for the first place. We'll sort it all out." But the fact of the matter was that the team came together basically to pull him back up again from what he thought was his disaster because he couldn't get the aircraft stopped. Wasn't his fault, but everybody else rallied around to take the blame with the boss to say, "Hey, you know, we messed up, guys. It's not the young fella's fault. He's learned more today than he'll probably ever learn." But
and I'd say the whole team learned something too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil. Well, everybody, we're about 4 minutes from the top of the hour, and I try to leave it this time available to the magnet. Mr. Lavinia I know he's in there listening somewhere. Does he want to step out at this point? And
hey, Mark, thank you. And thank you everyone for your participation today. We're going to have a special event tonight. Let me look at my calendar here real quick. So we do, of course, have our hospitality suite, which is always open. We've got yoga basics at 3:30 p.m. with Nancy Burtonshaw. And then in lieu of Shannon doing her brand builder session tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be doing part 2 of Sales Mastery, which was our special event from 2 weeks ago as Shannon is recovering. So tonight we're going to talk about overcoming objections and follow-up, best practices with follow-up, because the fortune's in the follow-up. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, be there and just get excited because I'm going to be unloading some stuff. As far as your topic today, the power of teamwork, I think that's beautiful. I can relate it most recently to a business meeting I was in where people were talking about stuff that I didn't really know anything about. And then they asked me my opinion. I said, I don't know, I just sell shit. And they're like, "Great, we're glad you're on staff." And that was it. So thanks, guys. I'll see you there. The burning bush has spoken. There you go.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Hey, have a wonderful day. A blessed day. We're still here on this side of the permafrost. Enjoy it. See ya.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. I'm going to stop recording. I think it's there we go.